I'm angry. Angry about Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, and angry about their Anarch and Camarilla books.
I'm now porn adjacent. I run a tabletop game stream regularly with some porn stars, which you can check out with suitable precautions in place at tabletopless.org. And just know that I put as much effort into this campaign as I would any other tits or no tits. Hello lovelies. I have a long, and some might say eventful, history with White Wolf, as was with Vampire the Masquerade in particular, and the storyteller system overall. I've never written for them. I found their writing restrictions rather severe and at odds with a lot of other writing advice that I've had. Plus, the people in charge of the old White Wolf, let's just say there were a lot of drugs washing around, and they had quite an inflated opinion of themselves. Though I've talked with Mark Kreinhagen more recently, at least within the last couple of years. There's an interview over on Grimstreams. He's a lovely fella. I'm talking more about the Justin Achilles and so on there. I was a member of the LARP Society for just over 10 years, I reckon. Used to play a lot of live action. I ran a very successful tabletop game. I ran Vampire the day it came out in the UK. That's how much I've been into Vampire. I'd already done a review of Vampire 5th edition, which you can find on this channel if you go searching for it. And there were aspects I liked, there were aspects I didn't like. I've revisited it recently, because over on Tabletopless we'll be doing at least a 2-session sort of Vampire 1-shot, 2-shot, maybe an even longer campaign, depending how we'll get on with it. So I've been revisiting the core book, and I thought I'd pick up the Anarch and Camarilla books just to round out my information on what else has been going on, to kind of keep abreast of the situation after the various controversies that engulfed these books, and I'm pretty pissed off. So we'll flip through both books, but what I have to say doesn't really have much to do necessarily with the content of the books, except in the most general sort of senses, I guess. Now, if you've watched my review of Vampire 5th edition, if you've seen a copy of the Vampire 5th edition book, you'll know that they went a very different route with the presentation. A lot of photography and photo manipulation, that sort of thing. Not my preference at all. I much prefer art in my role-playing game books, whether it's an established property or not. Concept art from computer games, as used in the recent Fallout RPG, is up my alley. Now, these books have a bit more drawing, which is an improvement in my book, but there is still an awful lot of photography and photo manipulation within the books, which is not a presentation that I like, but I could see what they were going for in trying to do like a fashion magazine sort of presentation in the main book, and more in the Camarilla book than the Anarch book, but it is present. It's not my taste, but I could see what they were trying to do, how they were going about it, and so on. That's present in these books, more the Camarilla book, but the quality isn't even as high as the core book, which is a bit of a problem. The Anarch book has a lot more in the way of art in it. That is my preference. I prefer it, but then you run into the issue of you've now got a sort of mixed message, I guess, in terms of art direction. It is more suited to the Anarchs, I suppose. Anyway, that's a minor niggle. There was something that always used to happen in the old White Wolf books that I really hated, and that was hiding all the pertinent information away within stories, within fiction, within unreliable narrators. And they've brought that back in these books. To get information, you have to read through a lot of interminable purple prose written by unreliable narrators, and I hate that, right? It's fine to have that as well as the pertinent information picked out, tell me what's really going on. You don't really get that within these books, so that is super annoying because it makes them difficult to reference. You don't really have as a storyteller, you don't have a consistent view of what is really going on. This isn't the only game in the whole Vampire series that has had that issue, but if you're doing a reboot of the whole franchise, of the whole intellectual property, ignoring the New World of Darkness, thank goodness, but if you're going to do that, why not take the chance to fix some of the actual problems with the old books instead of introducing new sort of stylistic ones and so on. The new Vampire has been stripped back a great deal, pared back a great deal. This is most felt within the disciplines, like Quietus is now a path of thaumaturgy, and so on and so on and so on. And that sort of compressed scope and so on makes things too basic, I think. Doesn't allow the clans to stand out from one another in any really meaningful or important way, and the changing of the names of the clans is arbitrary and kind of pointless. Like, why are the Setites called the Ministry? What sense does that make? Why would they change the name? Why are the Assamites now Banu Hakim? Why? What's the point? It's just change without reason, I guess, is what you get. And I guess that's the problem with a lot of it. It's nice to have a post-Gehenna campaign, but everything's just kind of The elders are disappearing. Do we know why? Probably Malkav. Which gives an opportunity for younger vampires to come up, and the use of blood potency instead of generation to determine vampiric power. That's a welcome change. That is perhaps the most welcome change, because it helps destroy the sort of hidebound generational system that gave elders such a huge advantage, and allows younger vampires to concentrate and take the time on empowering their blood by various means, and so to compete. So the main focus then seems to be, rather than Sabbat versus Camarilla, it's more Anarch versus Camarilla, which as a long-time Anarch player is something I can appreciate, something that makes a lot more sense, and something that focuses, instead of one group in the sway of the elders, one group fighting the elders, to a more overall conflict between youth and age, which is different to elders, but it makes more sense. We have a power vacuum. We have an opportunity for Anarchs, and it's quite thematic for these days, I guess, to step in and try out new ways of organising vampire society, new ways of living, the Camarilla weekend, and so on. So that should be what's in the Anarch book, but sadly, for the most part, it's not. I appreciate the more artistic direction in the Anarch book, but there is still a lot of photographs and photo manipulation, which just really doesn't look that good, and there isn't a lot of mechanical stuff, new bloodlines, new powers, new ways to use your powers, new clans with distinct disciplines instead of power alternatives within existing disciplines, and not a lot. If you're looking for mechanics, this last few pages is pretty much it. The rest of it is hidden information within prose and unreliable narrators, like I said. So yeah, it's an unfortunate thing. The other main thing that pisses me off about both of these books is that they are slimmer than a core book, but they cost as much or more than most core books for tabletop RPGs. So I feel ripped off. I really do feel ripped off. It's too expensive for what it is compared to the core book, and there is almost no information or rules that I can actually use within this book's pages. What there is, it's minuscule. You know, it could be a web handout or something. The book is just not worth the money, mechanically, or in terms of lore. As a games master, as a storyteller, it's not especially useful to me. There's very little of use in it. The Camarilla book has the same problems, but perhaps even more egregiously. It's the same size, same cost, too expensive for what it is. You don't get a lot of useful information out of it. And the Camarilla book focuses much more on photos and photo manipulation, which, yeah, that's a matter of taste. I don't like it personally. That's the subjective part. In the core book, I could see what they were going for and why, even though I didn't like it and I thought it was competently executed. But in the Camarilla book, I just don't feel the same way about it. I'm leafing through quickly because there isn't a great deal to say. It hides its information within purple prose. It doesn't particularly state any facts for you as a storyteller on what's really going on, or even multiple options about what's going on. It's not very easy to reference because all the information is hidden within different things, which makes it harder to index and so on. It just doesn't do it for me as a storyteller. It's not useful, it's too expensive, I don't like the presentation. Mechanically, there's almost nothing in here that we can use. Yeah, it's just way too expensive. I don't really have a lot more to say then. I feel ripped off. With both of these books, I feel ripped off. That is the main complaint that you can have. I think, because there is so little that's usable. They are so hard to read and extract useful information from. That's not helpful. There's almost no mechanics. Bloodlines, powers, new clans, and what there is minuscule even within that context. One last thing I feel I probably should say about both books and the direction of the game and so on. There was a big controversy. There were changes made to these books. There were edits made because there was some edgy content in them. Now, White Wolf as was a very progressive, woke company for its time. You know, they used female pronouns throughout their books, something which really offends my editorial sensibilities and my historical knowledge of the English language sensibilities. But you know, you would have thought they would have built up some goodwill from all of that. Apparently not, because when they included some edgy content, when they allowed or suggested further playing of extremist political characters as Bruja or whatever else, that caused a huge stink, even though in the old Bruja clan book, so we used to say Bruja here in the UK, I know it's Bruja, there was a skinhead as a sample character and a prostitute as a sample character, something they probably feel that they couldn't get away with anymore. There was also mention, I believe in the Camarilla book, that vampires were behind or exploiting the anti-homosexual agenda in Chechnya. Vampires are evil bastards. That kind of sounds like something that they would be involved in this sort of world of darkness. And it's a captive herd. Sounds like a good thing from a vampire point of view. But again, huge fuss over nothing, really. So what we have here, the old Vampire was fixated on story, on horror. It had Black Dog Game Factory as a more extreme imprint of its books, like the Simise Clan book and so on. For all that they were woke, before woke was a term, they were at least seeing role-playing as an art form, which is how I approach it, and that it was something that was capable of handling difficult material, something that was adult, mature. It trusted the players to deal with adult themes and difficult moral dilemmas, was playing the bad guy, playing something evil, and now it's just this apparently ballless, neutered, unmonstrous thing, and that's a huge disappointment. So I'm going to score these as a pair. All right. Style. The Anarch book is a slight improvement. The Camarilla book is a slight decline. I don't personally like the style, but I could see what they are going for. I can't really give it more than a high 3 for the Anarch book, maybe even a 4, a low 3 for the Camarilla book, maybe even a 2. So I guess that evens out each way. In terms of substance, these are expensive, as expensive as core books, smaller than core books. The information is badly presented, and there is almost nothing mechanically useful and no concrete facts for you to work from in either. So in terms of substance, 2 at the most. So we're looking at 5 out of 10 or 2.5 out of 5. That's an average score. 5 isn't terrible, isn't bad, but no, you know what? I'm going to drop the substance to 1. So that's 4 out of 10, 2 out of 5. Not worth it. There's just fuck all here. The useful information could fit on pamphlets, and instead we've got hardcover, full colour, shiny paper books with nothing useful in them, or barely anything useful in them. Otherwise I'd have scored them as 0. Not worth it. Save your money. Don't know if the Sabat book's going to be any better. Don't know if I want to risk the money on it. Disappoint. Zang.
Aren't you a little tired of so-called horror media about shiny, sparkly, angsty, whiny monsters? I know I am, and that's why I created Actual Fucking Monsters, where you will play an actual fucking monster doing horrible and monstrous things and being tracked down and killed for it. Buy now at DriveThruRPG, post-mort.com or lulu.com.